We're going to kick off this episode of Bride of Monster Kid Radio with the song Doble, calambre. It is from the band Los Esquizofrenicos, and you can find them on Bandcamp at losesquizofrenicos.bandcamp.com, or follow the link in the show notes. Check out their album. It's a collection of songs. It's their demo. Check them out. Let them know that you heard about them here on the podcast devoted to the classic and sometimes not so classic genre cinema of yesteryear. My name is Derek M. Cook, the writer, host, and producer of this show. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to me bending the rules a little bit, manipulating time, and not wanting to let Kaiju end. No, I wanted more Kaiju action. I wanted some proper Godzilla action, man. So I am joined this week by podcaster, author, musician, and Monster Kid Radio irregular Robert Kelly. And we're going to talk about Godzilla's Revenge, also known as All Monsters Attack. I know this movie gets a bad rap. I'm hoping you stick around for the conversation, though, and that maybe we can help reframe the movie for you, because spoiler alert, this is one of Robert's absolute favorite Godzilla films. Where do I stand on it? Well, you're going to have to listen to find out. Also this week, we have Mark Matsky back with another installment of his Beta Capsule review, still working on Ultraman Taro. There's a lot of Ultraman Taro out there, man, and he is going through each episode. So that'll be coming up here in a second. Plus, I wanted to let everybody know that I appreciate all the support that y'all have given us over the past few months. We've had a lot of changes happening here at Bride of Monster Kid Radio and Team Death, and just really, it means a lot. Beth and I have been working real hard to make sure that the podcast keeps going out every single week because of you. I mean, we love our listeners, and we love that you're there for us. Thank you for being there for us with everything going on right now. Not going to get into a lot of the details. If you follow us on Facebook, you know, some things that happened regarding a particular convention that we backed out of, things like that. Some things are in the works, and I cannot wait to let y'all know about it. As soon as I get more details and things are kind of firmed up, I'm going to let you know about some things that are going to be coming up for us, for Team Death, for Bride of Monster Kid Radio here in Arizona. Also, I want to give you all another heads up, because there's something incredibly cool coming, and I'll probably mention this again at the end. But remember about a month or so ago, I talked about going to the Chandler Museum for a screening of The Lost World. Well, check this out. They've got another movie coming up. They're showing an incredible film. They're showing the original War of the Worlds, August 14th at the Chandler Museum. I'm going to dig up some more details on that, and I'll talk about it at the end of the show. But to get to that, we've got to get through Mark Matsky's Beta Capsule review. You got to get through Robert Kelly and I talking about Godzilla's Revenge, and that's all coming up right after this.
Warning! Godzilla vs. the Thing, a shattering motion picture not for the weak of heart. Here in all its astounding realism is a soul-shocking experience. How much terror can you stand? What was this thing of unbelievable and unequaled terror that challenged Godzilla to a battle of unhuman strength versus supernatural evil? Godzilla vs. the Thing. See the war of the giants. See the birth of the world's most terrifying monster. See armies of the world destroyed by the Thing. The producers of Godzilla vs. the Thing issue warning to those who cannot take its full horror. To you with guts, you must see Godzilla vs. the Thing from the beginning in color scope from American International.
Buried within the uncharted depths of waters surrounding a group of islands off the 50th parallel
lies man's most formidable challenge. The awesome awakening of prehistoric monsters long thought extinct. Science was baffled and powerless. A terror-stricken humanity knew that it was on the brink of total destruction.
A once proud civilization now had to place its trust and hope in Godzilla and his powerful ally, Robot Man. In concert, they would fight this evil in a duel to the death. Battling by day, battling by night, it was more than a race against time. This war was an all-out effort whose ultimate purpose was to save our planet from total destruction.
Now came the moment of truth. The ultimate battle.
Against lightning, giant against giant in the most spectacular battle yet.
Proceed on in Godzilla versus Megalon.
Live from the Land of Light in Nebula M78, home of the mighty Ultra Heroes, it's Bride of Monster Kid Radio's Beta Capsule Review. Ultraman Taro, Episode 45. From a Japanese nursery song, she wore red shoes. Original air date, February 8th, 1974. When Kotaro breaks his after-work plans with Kitajima, the latter's ZAT member wanders the streets alone until he sees a little girl wearing red shoes. This unlocks a memory of his childhood friend Mari, who was abducted right in front of Kitajima. While reliving these painful events, he's being surveilled by an alien force from planet Dorzu. The next morning, there's a knock at Kitajima's apartment door. It's apparently the now all-grown-up Mari, but the woman harbors a tragic secret. She's doomed to transform into a monster as the opening salvo of an alien invasion. Kitajima is oblivious to this and attempts to subvert ZAT policy in order to give Mari a tour of headquarters. When she's denied access, the conflicted woman pleads with Kitajima to kill her before she can transform. But neither he nor Kotaro can pull the trigger, and Mari becomes Kaiju Memol, cutting a violent path through Tokyo. Kitajima, feeling personally responsible for the disaster, rushes off to face Memol on his own, an impulsive move that may seal his fate. From a Japanese nursery song, she wore red shoes, is indeed based on a real Japanese nursery song called Akai Kutsu, which means red shoes. Taught to generations of Japanese children, the song, which became widely known in the 1920s, tells the story of a girl wearing red shoes who is abducted by a foreigner who then seems to leave Japan from the port of Yokohama. It's a downbeat song based on true events interpreted today as an expression of anxieties over westernization of Japan in the early 20th century. Episode 45 is likewise downbeat, but is very good, even if the monster suit isn't the most impressive. The tension between human kindness, official defense policy, and bad alien intention is portrayed believably, as is Kitajima's journey, which comes to a melancholy conclusion in keeping with the folk song. As a bonus, fans of Taro Kaiju battles are treated to an extended explosive rumble. For Bride of Monster Kid Radio's Beta Capsule Review, this is Mark Matsky reporting.
The leaves are changing to brilliant colors, making the hills of western Pennsylvania a stunning patchwork of autumn. And it will be time for the Monster Bash Expo and Convention at the Marriott Pittsburgh North. The Monster Bash is October 16th through the 18th, 2026. Movies, vendors, entertainment, special events, giveaways, and the real-life Monster Kids. Guests of honor, Victoria Price, daughter of Vincent Price, Lit Lugosi, granddaughter of Bela Lugosi, Renee Browning, daughter of Rico Browning, who played the creature from the Black Lagoon, and Michael Glenn Nix, grandson of Glenn Strange, who played the Frankenstein monster in 3 classic films. Monster Bash is the gathering place for classic monster movie fans from across the nation. Don't miss it. This fall's Monster Bash, Friday through Sunday, October 16th through the 18th, 2026, at the Pittsburgh Marriott North. Meet hundreds of fans just like you. Get your discounted membership registration now online at monsterbash.us or get your pass at the door. Monster Bash, a graveyard smash. monsterbash.us.
We love the Monster Bash! Woo!
This is Count Vlad, but you may recognize me by my more familiar name, Count Dracula, and I'm here to offer you a friendly warning. Derek and his guests often get excited, and occasionally this results in revealing key plot points of the movies they're discussing. In your parlance, you might call these revelations spoilers. You know how the children of the night, monster kids, can get sometimes. So consider yourself warned, and don't come begging to me to kill them for their transgressions afterward. I have more pressing issues to take care of, like that pesky Van Helsing.
All right, listeners, I'm not ready to let the kaiju go. I know it's August now, it's no longer Kaiju July, but I just want to sneak one more in, man. Just one more kaiju film with my friend Robert Kelly. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Derek. How are you today?
I'm good. And I'm glad you could join me because what we're going to do on this episode is a complete and total takedown of fellow podcaster Rodney Barnett, who had the audacity to go on his Facebook page and pose the question, is there a worse Showa kaiju film than Godzilla's Revenge? So basically what I want everybody to do is go over to the Bloody Pit of Rod, which is his website, and tell him how wrong he is after you've listened to Robert and I talk about it.
I'll have to have some words with him.
Rod's a friend. All good.
Rod is a great guy. I think, have we both been on the Nashicast?
I don't think I've ever officially been on the Nashicast, but he's been on Monster Kid Radio. It's been years.
Yes, and you also loom large in the lore over there. Many references to Brother D throughout.
Nice. Yeah, actually, and Rod and I are actually talking about having him come back onto the show and record later this month, an episode covering the Universal film House of Horror. So anything that we bring up that we want to make sure we get back to him, I'll record it and make sure I play it for him when he's on the show. So do not go over to his website and blast him. Don't do any of that. But do check out the Bloody Pit of Rod. And actually, just a couple of days ago, he posted a whole bunch of posters for Godzilla's Revenge or All Monsters Attack, which is one of my favorite things that he does on his website is that he'll just grab like a whole bunch of movie posters for the same film and put them up online. And it's just a fun little resource. I love looking at this classic monster movie art. It's just so fun.
Yeah, he runs a great site there. Mm-hmm. I wonder if on the Bloody Pit show, I know he and Troy Gwynn occasionally talk about Godzilla movies. I wonder if they're gearing up to do a Godzilla Revenge episode.
You know, I've noticed that in the podosphere, is that a word? Do we like that word? Is that too? I don't know. In the podosphere, I've noticed that a couple of different podcasters that I'm friends with did cover a bunch of kaiju films in July, or at least talk about them online or something. So I don't know. Maybe it's just something in the air, for July, for Kaiju July.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for those of your listeners who are familiar with Record All Monsters, my Once and Future podcast, you may recall that not only am I an ardent defender of this film, but my episode on it is about 25 minutes longer than the actual movie itself.
That's not so hard, though. The movie's actually one of the shorter ones.
Yeah, 69 minutes, but my show, I tried to keep things at about 45 minutes most of the time. So I had a lot to say on this one that I didn't want to cut out. I'm going to come right out and say it. This is one of my favorite Godzilla movies for a lot of reasons.
Wow.
And I know I'm in the minority on that. I know a lot of people, I know we've talked about it briefly before, that it's definitely not your favorite. I wonder if you've cooled on it a bit, or warmed to it rather, but we'll get to that. I think it's incredibly creative. I think it's very smart. I think it's very silly. I think it's ultimately actually kind of a dark movie, a way that is simultaneously, I said dark, it's combative and hopeful. I think there's a lot of layers to this movie. I don't think it's a coincidence, given this is written by Shinichi Sekizawa and directed by Ishiro Honda. You know, I think there's a lot of deliberate layers here that people aren't really willing to look at. But
okay. I will say that my experience with this film is a little limited. I maybe watched it twice before watching it this morning to prepare for this podcast. I was off work today, so I, made myself a nice big cup of coffee, sat down and pulled it up. And this was the first time I watched it in Japanese with subtitles. The previous times I've watched it have been the English dub. And I think I might have watched it once hosted by Sven Gulli.
Yep.
Yeah. But this was the first time I just watched it straight with subtitles, and my opinion did change. And I do have some thoughts about it that, I think you're going to be happy to hear, because I know it's one of your favorites. And that's actually one of my favorite things about revisiting movies here on the show, whether I've talked about them on the show or not. Revisiting these films, sometimes you have to be in the right place to enjoy them. Sometimes you have to have a little bit more context. And at this point in my kaiju journey, definitely I have more context. My kaiju, I don't know, I can't make that a word. But this one is interesting. So 1969, we are fully in the era of Godzilla being, a defender of Earth, maybe defender of children. He's not the scary monster that he was in the 50s. At this point, we are firmly in, we're going to make sure we can get as many kids in to see these movies as possible. But I don't feel like it skimps on the suitmation, on the suits or the production design just because it's a kid's movie.
Right.
And we got a lot of monsters to play with too, which is great.
Yes. Now, one of the complaints a lot of people have is a lot of the monsters in here are here through stock footage.
Hey,
but I feel like there's a number of reasons for that. One, the effects director for Toho at the time, Eiji Tsuburaya, was really sick. But there's also, outside of the practical reasons it's happened, there are, in the text of the film, reasons for this. And I'm so glad I was doing some research before to remind myself, because I did so much research on this movie when I did the initial episode on Record All Monsters, that I'm not alone in this opinion, that the stock footage is playing from movies that would have just gone to Japanese TV at the time.
Okay.
And would have played in theaters 2 to 3 years before this film takes place. So these are the films our main character, Ichiro, who's a little boy, who a lot of people find annoying, as most people do with a lot of little boys. But these are the Godzilla movies he would be most familiar with, because they were on TV and because they were recent theatrical releases to him.
Okay.
So when he's, escaping into his fantasy world from his harsh reality, which we'll get into, I think, he is remembering the Godzilla movies he has seen most recently.
I think that works. I think that works just fine. I knew that it was a lot of stock footage, but I feel like the picture quality, the film quality didn't make that obvious. I just knew because I knew going into it.
Right.
And, keeping in mind again, too, this is the 60s, right? This is not the era of having these things on VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, or whatever. That might have shown on TV, but I think you can get away with using the stock footage, just like Universal used stock footage of Frankenstein's monsters and later Frankenstein Universal films, just like all the studios did. And it gives you instant production value if you're going to throw some other monsters in there. And because so much of this movie is the kid observing the monster action as opposed to participating in the monster action, I think it works.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there, just practically and with the textual reasons, it works really well. It's layered into the film. And I think, for me, I had never seen Ibira, Horror of the Deep, or Godzilla vs. Sea Monster, the first time I saw this, which I was like 5.
Okay.
I had seen Son of Godzilla, but I had never seen Ibira. It was hard to find for whatever reason at that time. So that stuff was new to me, and I knew it must have come from another movie because of the Son of Godzilla scenes. But I was also, to me, it just meant there's another Godzilla movie out there for me to find, and that was exciting.
My first time seeing this would have happened during that mainlining of all the Toho and other kaiju films after being introduced to these movies proper, thanks to Kyle Yount of the late lamented Kaiju Cast. And, because I knew there were movies after this or leading up to this, I think I watched them pretty much all in order when I did sit down to watch them all. So I was familiar, and I love Ibera. I love Godzilla versus Sea Monster, whatever you want to call it. That's one of my favorites. That is probably within my top 5.
It's a lot of fun.
It is, and I mean, the score for that alone just is amazing.
The score's terrific.
Oh, it's wonderful.
It's terrific.
This one, I mean, the music's okay. There's a different take on the Godzilla March, kind of, with some lyrics and all that at the very beginning. Basically, everybody's disappointed with living on the Earth. Why is living on the Earth so hard? Did you not, Hedorah's coming. That's why it's so hard. Yes, I live here,
Yes.
I was thinking about saving this actually until later in the conversation, but I'm just going to bring it up now. I got a real strong vibe from this film that reminded me of a 1980s film aimed at Generation X kids that I grew up loving. I got a Never-Ending Story vibe off of this.
Oh, yeah.
I got a
big
real,
time.
real Never-Ending Story vibe with the kid being bullied and not having many friends and being kind of introverted and then having this fantasy world that he goes into. And as opposed to in the Never-Ending Story, there's, the avatar basically that he's, well, not really Avatar, but, the other character or whatever.
Yeah.
But in this one, he's actually going to this fantasy world to escape, and it's a perfect Generation X movie too, because he's a latchkey kid, right? Dad's always working. Mom has to work late. He's got to come home and take care of himself for his afternoon snack and do his homework, and notes being left for his mom. So it's a Gen X movie too, even though it was made in 1969. So there's a lot of things in it for, I think people of my age, and I know you're a little bit younger than I am, but of our age, to kind of grab onto and find these familiar beats that we would see kind of explored and maybe even exploited later by 1980s Hollywood. And I really dug that element of this too. You even have the big bully and all that. And, he gets the courage to stand up to the bully because of what's going on in his fantasies. And it's wonderful, man.
Yeah, I've never made that connection, but that's really good. A lot of people kind of dismissively will compare this to Home Alone, but I think Never-Ending Story is much better analogy.
I mean, I could see some Home Alone-ness to it, but maybe only in that you've got a couple of kids that could be really annoying. But really, the kid in this, he's less annoying than any little kid in a Gamera film.
Oh, for sure. Sure.
He's so much better than the Gamera kid.
But he has a lot of agency in this, and that's actually part of what the movie's trying to talk about. Because behind the scenes with this, not only was Eiji Tsuburaya sick, Ishiro Honda was tired of making monster movies. Because he started out, making, fairly small, very compelling dramas. And that's why the human story in the first Godzilla works so well. So he wanted to get back to doing that when Toho's, big boss Tomoyuki Tanaka was okay, time to make another Godzilla movie. And this was his solution to do that without turning Godzilla into a nuclear horror again.
Yeah. The kid's got a lot of agency, like you said, but really the Godzilla action, a lot of it is just him observing the Godzilla action. There's a lot of stuff going on with, okay, is it pronounced Manila? Like Minya? How would you pronounce it?
So because I grew up with the dub, I have always called him Minya.
Minya, okay.
And when I did the episode, I used Minya and Manila interchangeably. Manila is the official English language version, though.
Okay. And he's Godzilla's son canonically, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
There are some questions about it. People like to nitpick from Son of Godzilla. Well, is it his egg or did he adopt it? Whatever. It's he's raising it. And in this film, Minya, who can talk to Ichiro, explicitly calls him my dad.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
He's raising him. He's showing him how to use his breath weapon.
How to be a monster.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the film in which he stomps on his tail to make him go from blowing smoke rings to an actual atomic breath or whatever.
Yes.
And I love that. It's kind of a goofy, silly scene, but I love it. It's charming.
There's a lot of charming silliness in this movie. And I think, again, because it's from a child's perspective, it's just going to have that. And I think it's one of the movie's strengths. I know a lot of people consider it a weakness, but to me, it is a strength for the movie. Because I related so much to Ichiro as a kid.
Yeah?
Yeah, I was... So I'm like 6'4" now, and meaty, we'll put it that way.
Okay.
But when I was a kid, I was really tall. By the time I was in 7th grade, I was 6'2". And I was always like at least a foot taller than my peers. We were going through some old photos that my mom was holding on to yesterday. And like always at least a foot, like a head taller than everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
I was also really skinny. And I got picked on a lot for like people would call me a scarecrow and stuff like that, And I was also very afraid to fight back or tell teachers or whatever. So this movie was very much made for me after having discovered Godzilla and falling in love with it. And then Godzilla was not popular when I was a kid. Most people who knew anything about Godzilla knew about the Hanna-Barbera cartoon or Godzilla versus Megalon. And it was just not a cool thing to be into. And then when the Matthew Broderick movie came out, a few years, however long after that, it became, for a little while, a really cool thing to be into. And the movie actually came out, and then it was no longer a cool thing to be into anymore. So this always just spoke to me on a almost primal level.
Okay.
And I think I know that I have blinding nostalgia goggles for this film, but I really tried when I wrote for Record All Monsters to be objective on it. And I think that actually made me appreciate it even more, looking at the behind the scenes stuff. And Honda wanted to tell a story about a kid like that. He wanted to tell a story about how the rapid post-war industrialization of Japan was hurting families, and this rampant capitalist drive was, hurting people. And that's the story he wanted to tell. And he says, how can I make a Godzilla movie that I'm contractually obligated to make about that? And, teaming up with screenwriter Sekizawa again, they did it. They found a way to make it a fun monster movie while having something fairly heavy to say.
It's interesting because you've got this latchkey kid with a great imagination that he is, and this is not the first time he's kind of sat down to imagine, going to Monster Island and hanging out with the monsters. And shoot, I do it all the time. I'd love to go hang out with Godzilla. You kidding me?
Oh, yeah.
So this is not the first time he's done this. And as much fun as it is, it's a coping mechanism, for living in a home in which mom is always at work, dad's always at work. He is, and I said it earlier, he's a latchkey kid. And, I wasn't necessarily a latchkey kid growing up myself. My mother was home a lot. But, I still see some elements of that in me because I also was kind of an introverted guy. I didn't have a whole lot of friends. I did get picked on a lot. Yes, I was 6'4". I am 6'4". I was always the tallest kid in class. I was always in the back in the class photos or over on the side in the class photos. I was always skinny up until I started living on my own and lived less than 5 minutes away from 5 different fast food restaurants. And somehow got it in my head that if it took more time to make the food than to eat the food, it wasn't worth making. So a lot of microwave burritos were in my diet back then. And, I wasn't really an athletic kid growing up either because I had asthma. I have asthma. So there was always that extra edge of, why aren't you going out for sports? Why aren't you doing basketball? Because I didn't care. I wanted to sit around and read and play on my computer and do all these nerdy things. I was really into Star Wars, man. I cared about that stuff. So I also was bullied a lot. And, the one time I did try to stand up for myself, I got hit in the face in gym class and, got a bloody lip. It didn't go well for me. So I see myself in this kid. But it's not just that. There's this kind of sub-story with the bank robbers or the robbers who ended up with a ton of money. There's this little side story going on here with them as well that kind of plays into what's going on here in the film. So there are some more human-like elements, adult-like elements going on as well. And I wonder if maybe that's part of the reason why this film gets not necessarily the best reception when you're going into a Godzilla movie looking for, especially one from Honda, looking for that human story that also, is as compelling as the dudes in the rubber suits.
Yes. So I was thinking about this film when I was listening to your Gorath episode from a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Because for whatever reason, they're tied together in my head. I think I used the term earlier, this dark optimism in a lot of Honda's work that I think is kind of like what Gene Roddenberry wanted to do with Star Trek. Like the threats are not from warring nations or whatever. It's less concerned about the threat than about the response. How we as humans come together to respond to something. And I think this movie does that on a micro scale. Like instead of looking at something cosmic like you have in Gorath or in many episodes of Star Trek, you see that with these neighborhood kids. Ichiro has been built kind of for this by his community. And even though the community eventually does step up to help, the police are there, his neighbor, the toy maker, calls the police when he finds the money, which I looked it up and it'd be almost $500,000 what they stole.
Yeah, that's life-changing money right there, but he does the right thing, so.
Yeah, he finds it, and I love in the dub, he finds it and he goes, "Hey, that's not mine," because it's in his car. I just love that line. The guy who did it in the dub did a great job. His dialogue in the dub is full of not so helpful observations like that, and I love that. He tells Ichiro when he's complaining about bullies, he says, "A bum like that will always try to put you down." Okay, that doesn't help me though. And just the police, the guys at the ramen stand, everyone does come together when they need to. For notably, though, not for Ichiro himself, but to stop the crime. And I think that is, they don't come together to make his life easier. And once the whole criminal subplot is settled, I think you have one of the saddest moments in the series, where the toy maker tells him, "Okay, let's go home," and he says, "But there's no one there." His parents have been working overnight during this whole thing.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of why I tie it to something like Gorath. And I wonder, all the people coming together to save the Earth is the intrapersonal costs that we're not seeing.
It's really interesting. I've been doing, over the past few years, I've been doing a much deeper dive into Star Trek than I ever have before. I love Star Trek. I talk about Star Trek a lot more than anybody in my life. And I'd still love to do more Star Trek here on the show at some point, somehow. But with this much deeper dive than I've ever done before, I'm starting to recognize some of these things, some of Roddenberry's tendencies and inclinations and such, in a way that I don't think I really recognized or understood before. So I see where you're coming from there, where there's this kind of, what did you call it, dark optimism?
Yes.
I like that. I like that a lot. And I see that in this film, or in Gorath in particular, but I can see a little bit of it in here too. I do find it interesting as well that, and I've said this about any classic film, not just monster movies, but, any classic film, that they're snapshots, they're anthropological deep dives, because you get to see what was important to the culture and the community that spawned these films, just like any other piece of art. And the police just walk into the toy maker's house when they're looking for people.
Yeah.
There's no knocking on the door. There's no, "Pardon me, sir, may we come in and have a..." No, they just walk right on in. And at first I'm thinking, is this because it's a toy shop? But no, it's not really. It's kind of his home. Yeah. And they just walk in, and there's no problem with this. Now, I don't know if this was a cultural thing or if this was just a shortcut in the movie, but I found it interesting nonetheless. And I did like the toy maker quite a bit. I liked that character. I know Yamamoto, the actor, supposedly wasn't really a big fan of this particular role. And I don't know if it's because he's used to playing villains, which is what he was kind of known for at the time.
Yes.
But I really liked him in this. And I did like that kind of fatherly, I'm going to give Ichiro just enough information, to kind of get him on to his quest, kind of like the guy in the bookstore, Never Ending Story, going to give him just enough. And I liked that.
I think it's a really good performance from the actor, and in the dubber seems to understand what's going on with that performance as well. And just the stuff that seems nakedly unhelpful just gets me every time. The writing is so funny in both versions of the film with his character, and there's also a really artful scene involving him where, when he calls the police after finding the money, where it's silent, it's just silent, and he's in the phone booth on the phone with the police, and he's so animated. He's stomping his feet and waving his arms around, and you see the traffic going behind him, and it's just that's a great, both dramatic and comedic scene. And was he Mr. Taco? Am I remembering that correctly in King Kong versus Godzilla?
Ooh, I don't remember. If only I had a machine that I can go online and look.
Oh, I have a book here.
He was in King Kong Escapes, but I'm not finding anything for King Kong versus Godzilla.
I may have just made that up.
Oh, well, he was Doctor Who in King Kong Escapes.
Okay, yeah, so that's the kind of thing he's known for. And I guess this wasn't very meaty to him, but he does such a good job with it. I almost feel like it'd be like casting Vincent Price as someone's grandpa in something.
Yeah, I could see that. I enjoyed the performance. I thought it was a chance to kind of see him do something a little bit different. King Kong Escapes is one of my hands. It's also my top 5. I absolutely love that movie. And as I said on a previous episode that, I've got like I think it's Italian version of the poster. It's like the one I spent the most money on to have framed because it's just so cool. Uh, and framing just costs way too much money. I'm convinced it's a scam. But anyway, it's just so cool. And I really liked him in this. And I liked his home, the way it was set up. It didn't feel like they skimped on production design. There's stuff in that set. Like in the first scene where Ichiro comes in, there's like this flying saucer thing in the background, just kind of floating there. And what is that? Are we not going to address that? You can see that kind of floating. You find out later it's hanging on a string or something, but are we just not going to talk about the flying saucer in the background? What's going on?
Well, there's so many wonderful little details in all of the sets in this film.
Yeah.
When you go to Ichiro's apartment, they make it look lived in realistically, but also make it feel cavernous and lonely. Even though it's a tiny little city apartment, and you see when his mom's there and you get more of a sense of scale, they're like crammed into that place. But it feels so big and empty in the scenes where he's there alone. That's just one little, and when you see his toys in the cabinet and he has the Godzilla toy and his homemade computer, and there's so many details put into that. They could have just had a cardboard box, but no, they have painted dials and radio knobs and vacuum tubes and stuff. They put a lot of work into all of these little things. They weren't cheaping out.
Yeah. I was very impressed, and I thought it was pretty cool that we got to see some ideas as to what the Japanese culture thought computers were going to be able to do and what computers could do. For a 1969 film, I thought that was kind of neat. We got that. And to go back to the size of the home that he had with his parents, it is a small place, a small space. And there's that kind of looking at the anthropology of of things where that's kind of how people lived in that part of the world at that time because of what had happened economically to Japan. We're still dealing with the fallout and the reconstruction and everything that's happened there, and the westernization of things coming in and all this other stuff happening. So you have this small apartment, this small place, but it does feel empty and alone and lonely, and no wonder this kid has this active imagination and thriving fantasy life. He maybe gets to talk about it with one person on his way to and from school, but otherwise his friends are in his head. Are the monsters on Monster Island. And it's kind of sad. But then he goes to go on adventures with Minya. So,
Yeah. Well, in the Japanese version, the little girl, her name is Sashiko. First of all, I think it's really interesting that her mom, when she finds him playing in the vacant lot, she tells Ichiro to go home, and she's been watching Gavra and his gang bully them. Doesn't tell them anything.
Mm-hmm.
She just, stop that. Go home. To Ichiro, and lets the bullies do whatever. And then the other thing with her, in the Japanese version, when he tells her that the car's brake squealing sound like Minya, in the Japanese version, she goes, "You're lying. You've never seen a monster." And in the US version, she just gives a dismissive, "Oh, that's exciting."
Oh, well, yeah. I couldn't remember the differences when I watched the subtitle today, so I can remember the differences from the dub. I kind of want to go back and rewatch it now.
It's very interesting because there's just this dismissiveness of anytime he talks about monsters to anyone, which we really only see him talk to the girl and the toy maker. When he tells the toy maker he should put some of the monsters on the computer, he says, he's just like, and then he leaves, and that's a real good idea. Just I wish I knew a normal kid to test these on.
I don't know what I expected when I sat down to watch it this time, other than, I got to be ready to go when Robert's available and we can talk about it. So I wasn't quite sure what to expect, but I was so pleasantly surprised to enjoy it so much this time.
It's a very kind film. It's a very hopeful. We don't know what's going to happen as, at the end of the movie when the camera pulls out and these kids just disappear into this cityscape and it just goes black. We don't know what's going to happen to them, but you get the sense that he's going to be okay, even though he went through all this terrible stuff. I personally, when I first saw the 2014 Godzilla, and Ken Watanabe's character is named Ichiro as well, in that, I personally decided that 2014 was a sequel to Godzilla's Revenge, and that was Ichiro. And the 2014 American Godzilla is Minya.
Okay.
There is no textual support in either film for that. It is just my own dumb little headcanon that makes me laugh and smile whenever I watch those movies.
Okay.
But it is something that whenever I'm watching one of the MonsterVerse Godzilla movies, I just, Godzilla did say you needed to fight your own battles. Look at you go.
All right. So him fighting his own battles and kind of stepping up and no longer being meek or bullied. At the end of the movie, he kind of turns into a little jerk.
Yes.
What are you doing, dude? I mean, standing up to your bully is one thing, but then messing with the dude with the motorcycle and the paint? Come on, man. What are you doing, kid?
One thing that's really interesting about that is Honda and Sekizawa wanted to end it with the mother crying at the table the next morning after they have breakfast. And Tanaka and the studio told them, no, you have to have a real ending. So what they came up with was to kind of emphasize that bleakness they wanted to end on. Yeah, he's found a community, but is it a good one for him?
Good point.
They're trying to make a point in this movie, and I think they succeed, but you have to be paying attention. And looking at older criticism of this movie, I specifically remember when I was a kid, the Barry's Temple of Godzilla was the Godzilla website.
Okay.
And he would give a movie either 5 or 10 Godzillas as a rating. I can't remember which. But he did not give this any Godzillas. He gave it a bomb.
Really?
And I have the quote here.
That website's still around.
It is. And I think it's important that it is still around. I'm glad it is. But what is the quote? Where did I put it?
It's GodzillaTemple.com while Robert's looking for the quote.
Without a doubt, the worst Godzilla film ever made.
That's not true. It wasn't true then. And and it's not true now.
So I just, and then I have also here the Japanese science fiction, fantasy, and horror book from Stuart Galbraith IV. This is the 1993 edition, or 94 edition, excuse me. And he calls this nonetheless a tiresome film and a great disappointment.
And maybe it's because when I watch these movies, especially over the past decade, I'm a lot more open to these movies anymore. I don't try to take this movie was terrible kind of approach. I love Manos, The Hands of Fate straight. I mean, that should probably say enough, right? So I don't see it. I don't know what you would have considered the worst Godzilla movie ever made up until this point. This is only the 10th film. But still, I don't agree with that at all. I think it's actually worthwhile.
If you want my opinion, up to this point in the series, it would be Godzilla Raids Again, which I don't hate, but I like to pick on.
Okay.
I think just in terms of quality, its story is kind of nothing. There's no resilience in the heroes, like
Okay.
they don't stay behind to rebuild Okinawa after the attack. They go somewhere else and do something else, And in real life, yeah, that's what you'd probably do, but we're doing a monster movie story. Like
Okay.
and I don't even think it's that bad. I think
Sorry. Go ahead.
sorry, yeah. I don't even think it's that bad. I think it's just not as good as what came before or what came after. It was just kind of a meh movie. So that's what I would say was the worst one up to that point. And again, I don't even think it's bad.
So this is something I kind of talked a little bit about last week, that, you had all the years leading up to Godzilla in the filmmakers' lives to get ready to make Godzilla. And then you had a year to make the sequel. So,
Absolutely.
and I feel, Godzilla Raids Again, I enjoy it. It gave us Anguirus, and I like that. It gave us a monster versus monster battle, and I like that. But does it hold up as enjoyably as the others? Maybe not. I think it's important, but yeah, okay. I think I'm finding myself agreeing with you on this one.
And so my personal least favorite in the series is the one from 1992, Godzilla versus Mothra: The Battle for Earth. I love Mothra. Mothra.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a particularly good representation of Mothra, and I also think it's very busy trying to be other movies before it gets down to the business of being a Godzilla movie. And they had dabbled in Godzilla versus King Ghidorah with some Terminator references and some, more traditional sci-fi stuff.
Which I'm giggling, but I love it. So, yeah.
I didn't feel like it distracted from the Godzilla of it all.
Okay.
But I did feel like the Indiana Jones romancing the stone stuff they had going on in Godzilla versus Mothra did distract. But that's just personal preference. I think the actual worst film in the series is probably Godzilla versus Megaguirus.
Oh, okay.
Because nothing happens.
Fair enough.
Nothing happens in it. And again, I will watch any of these movies at the drop of a hat. There are much worse movies in their own genre than these that I'm bringing up. I have a deep and abiding love for all of them, but we have to be honest. And I don't blame anyone for any Godzilla movie being their favorite or their least favorite, except for calling this one their least favorite. And even then, if you have a good reason, I think a lot of the reasons are lazy. They're copy pasted from things like Barry's Temple of Godzilla. But, if you really believe that's you, man. I just think this movie really does deserve a second look for a lot of people with the motivations in mind, or taking it even just on its own. Just completely on its own. One of the things I kind of compare it to recently since I wrote the essay on it for Record All Monsters, is the current seasons of The Simpsons.
Oh, okay.
A lot of people are let The Simpsons die, and I think recent years, like maybe the past 5 years of the show that I've seen, they've come up with some really creative stuff and really funny and surprising stuff. And some of it is as good as the mid-late 90s seasons. But people are dismissing it because they're saying, it's never going to be as good. It's been bad for 20 years. Let it die. Blah, blah, blah. But they started improving, I feel, when they quit being so worried about the legacy of the show and just started writing what they thought was funny again. And I feel like this is that sort of, don't take it on its own terms. I do think it does hold up in the Godzilla canon, but I think you need to start by just watching it as a film.
Well, and you've also got the introduction of a new kaiju, and I want to talk about Gabra a little bit. This is the first time we see this particular kaiju, so this is not stock footage when it turns up. Gabra, which I've seen compared to a dog, a cat, a cricket. I don't know what it is, but it's amphibious kind of, and it is the bully on Monster Island, which is kind of why they've nicknamed the bully in Ichiro's life Gabra. What do you know about Gabra? I don't know much about Gabra, where it came from, any of that.
So, yeah, the initial concept for Gabara was for a monster in, I want to say, Son of Godzilla. For one of the bug monsters, it was going to be a big cricket.
Okay.
And it got reworked into this kind of ogre-looking thing. And he is inspired by two things from what I can find. The traditional Japanese monster, the Oni, which is a kind of ogre. And on Toho's official website for the monsters, his little bio says he is a mutated toad.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So that is what I know about Gabra. I also just enjoy his design. He's a weird guy. He's got these electric powers. Strange beast, literally a kaiju.
I like him. I kind of like the design of him. I like it when the kaiju get a little weird. I've talked about my love with you for X the Thing from Outer Space. I love the weird looking, ones. And this guy's a little on the weird looking side. He's still reptilian enough to be, in the Godzilla Rogues Gallery for me. I really dig him. I don't think he really got used a lot in later Godzilla films. Nope. Apparently he turned up on TV though, and I've never watched Go Green Man, and what was the other one?
Godman.
Go Godman. I haven't seen either one of these. Are these things I should track down?
They're interesting little appearances. Mia's appearance on Godman is more interesting, in my opinion, because he's a villain.
Okay, interesting.
He's a villain in that, and he's a big baby, and he wants a pacifier. And it's a really, really bad looking suit. It doesn't fit the actor well. Its hands are too big. But I think more interesting for Gabara is he's kind of reworked into the Monster Salunga for Godzilla Singular Point, the anime that came out a few years ago.
Really? Okay.
Yes. They combined Gabara and Baragon to make this. Not in the text of the show, but the designers. They took Gabara and put Baragon's body plan on him, and he's a really interesting monster and a key part of the overall story in Singular Point, which is another, I feel, underappreciated bit of Godzilla media.
But I haven't seen it, so I don't know.
Gabara is used in that. I remember when the trailer came out, no one clocked the Baragon connection. Everyone was, oh, look, Gabara's back. So yeah, Gabara and he has this warbly roar laugh. It sounds like teasing laughter, kind of predecessor of the Titanosaurus's roar. I think he's a great monster, and I wish he was in more. I think his being tied to probably what is just a fantasy of a kid has kind of kept him from being included in anything. I think it would have been cool to see him in Final Wars. But, we got him here.
Yeah.
If you want to see him.
I think he looks great. And when you were talking about his roar, that reminds me of my favorite part of this entire film.
Yeah.
My favorite part of this entire film is when the toy maker accidentally hurts himself and lets out a scream. And Ichiro's like, what monster was that? It was me. I loved that moment. That, it was comedy. It was non-monster at all. I loved it. It was my favorite moment of the whole movie. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it.
It's fantastic. In the dub, he steps on his lit cigarette.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, he steps on it and he screams, and in the dub, he goes, ah! And Ichiro comes in and says, was that a monster cry? And he goes, no, I just said, ah, yeah. Ichiro shuts his head all and closes the
And it was fun. It was a fun moment that I really enjoyed. Yeah.
It's a good moment. The dub is my preferred version of this.
Okay. I'll have to go back and watch it then.
And John LeMay agrees with me. I have his book here, Editing Japanese Monsters. And he judges each cut of the film. He compares them throughout the book and declares a winner. And he declared the Godzilla's Revenge version is the winner.
Oh, okay.
And I agree with that. I think because for a number of reasons, I think I do like the March of the Monsters music that is in the Japanese opening credits.
Sure.
And I love kind of like this predecessor, this proto-punk riot girl vocal of this woman screaming the monster names.
That was fun.
But in the US version, there's a jazz instrumental, like this aggressive jazz instrumental called Crime Fiction by a guy named Irvin Jerem. And I really like that piece, and that's really the only place I can find it. I can't even find that streaming on YouTube except as a rip from this movie.
Oh, okay.
So I like that piece of music a lot, and the dub is one of the only places I know of to hear it. And I prefer Minya's voice in the dub. In the Japanese version, it's an actress, a woman doing his voice. And I don't have a problem with it, but it might just be nostalgia. In the dub, he talks like this, kind of like a mix of Don Knotts and Barney. And just the line readings from the dub just live in my head and have my entire life. From like the famous Godzilla says that I should learn to fight my own battles, to a guy, no, chicken. It's just like whoever did that voice was having a lot of fun with it too. And it gets me. It really gets to me. Just like you're laughing at it, and it makes me laugh so hard as well. Like,
yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch. I don't remember that much of it. This was over a decade ago, I'm sure, when I watched it. So I have to go back, but that's I have to go back for it. I just have to go back for it. So
one thing I find interesting that I like in the Japanese version a lot, though, is when Minya talks about when the red bamboo jets come in from Minya talks about the jets, and he says humans are trying to invade our island again. And in the US version, Ichiro says, "Oh, jets," and Minya goes, "Yeah, they sure are scary." And that put me into a spiral of thought about, well, if Minya's afraid of the jets, is Godzilla afraid of the jets? Is Godzilla, because Godzilla's an animal, right? Is he reacting out of fear? All of a sudden you think of him like a dog who finds himself standing over a wasp nest, like,
mm-hmm.
And I just think those little lines, if you think about them at all, become very compelling. And I think the dub does a really strong version of that. There are so many different texts and subtext in both versions of the movie that are exclusive to each other. Watching both of them is worthwhile. I just do prefer the dub. One thing I find very interesting is there is a religious subtext in this film as well, in that the first thing Minya says to Ichiro is, "Don't be afraid." And if you're familiar with your Hebrew Bible and your New Testament, that is always what angels tell people when they encounter them.
That's true.
And at the end of the film in the Japanese version, when the toy maker is trying to explain to the reporters why Minya means so much to Ichiro, in the Japanese version, he explicitly says, well, we have gods. Why can't Minya be the god for this kid? And that's something with my religious background I find extremely interesting, that I would like to plumb the depths of more. And the fact that that is said in the Japanese version, I always take as vindication. Oh, I wasn't reading too much into this. That is the intention. This is quasi-religious experience for Ichiro.
That's interesting, man. And so it's much more than just this a silly kids throwaway movie. There's a lot of things to really kind of get out of this if you give it another shot. And I'm so glad I gave it another shot for this. And I'm glad that I decided to just extend Kaiju Live one more week. I didn't want to let it go. And I think this is a good one to go out on. This was a really interesting watch for me to watch the Japanese subtitled version, but I am going to go back and rewatch the dub just because I want to get that, well, gosh, kind of from Minya. I want to get a little bit of that. If nothing else, just to kind of enjoy it, in a different way, because it's been so long since I've watched it that way. This is a real treat, man. And I'm so glad that you've been championing, promoting this one for as long as you have been, because it gave me the opportunity to find another movie to enjoy much more than I had before, man. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
Just promote myself, my music, the book, Record All Monsters, the book of essays from the podcast is still available for purchase at Amazon. I am always, as I'm slowly working on the third season, which will come out someday, probably at this point, just drop it all at once. But working on that still, doing my music, wolf-cub-music.com, at wolfcub music on Instagram. No big shows coming up. I am going to be back in West Texas in October from the 9th through the 16th. I'll be playing for sure at the Alcove Social and Alpine rather, and the Boathouse in Terlingua. A couple other shows in the works right now. But yeah, Derek, thanks for having me. I kind of offhandedly mentioned I've been wanting to talk about this movie for a bit, and you're, well, Kaiju Live doesn't have to end.
It does not have to. It's my show. I decide, right? I'll make sure there's a link to everything that you mentioned in the show notes over at monsterkidradio.net. I'll also make sure there's a link specifically to your book over there as well, and it'll be through the Amazon affiliate link that I've got. So if you are supporting Robert by picking up his book, I get like a penny off the top of that, and that doesn't take anything out of Robert's pocket either. It comes out of Jeff Bezos's pocket. I'll also make sure there's an Amazon affiliate link to the big book of Japanese giant monster movies, The Lost Cuts, Editing Japanese Monsters, Volume 2 International Edits, which is by John LeMay, which Robert brought up. And, just make sure you check out monsterkidradio.net for everything that we've got going on. Thanks for doing this, man. I really appreciate you, dude.
Yeah, I appreciate me on. And I guess I will shout out John LeMay too. When I did the initial writing for Record All Monsters, he, not only his books, but he himself was a huge resource. Talking to him, him showing me some primary sources and even guesting on a few episodes. So yeah, shout out to John LeMay, and shout out to you, Derek, for keeping this going. I'm always happy to see a new episode in my feed.
I also want to give a shout out to Rod Barnett. Do not harass him, but check out pitofrod.blogspot.com to see his meandering thoughts on movies old and new. I'll make sure there's a link directly to the poster art post that he put in for All Monsters Attack, which also served to help inspire this episode of Bride of Monster Kid Radio. Thank you, Rod, and thank you, Robert, for doing this, man.
Thanks, Derek.
Well, that brings us to the end of this episode of Bride of Monster Kid Radio. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here and sticking around to the very end, where I'm going to let you know a little bit more about that War of the Worlds screening. It's called Film Friday. The War of the Worlds, the 1953 film. It's happening on August 14th at 6 p.m. at the Chandler Museum, which is at 300 South Chandler Village Drive in Chandler, Arizona. And it is free, but they do ask you to reserve your spot because there is limited seating. Now, this is not a theater setup, nor is it just a classroom. It's kind of a mix. It is a large class type room with a very big screen. They're going to have free treats provided by Spooky Swirls, which is a horror-themed bakery here that I still haven't been to. I've been wanting to, I just haven't gotten there yet. And last time they had free popcorn, so there's going to be free popcorn there as well. There will also be an introduction by Ed Finn, the founding director for the Center for Science and Education at Arizona State University. He's also the associate director of the School of Innovation and Society. This is going to be a lot of fun, man. I cannot wait for this. August 14th, it's a Friday, 6 p.m. If you're in the area, I would love to see you there, man. I would love to meet up and chat it up about monster movies, about the War of the World, and just have a really good time. Big thanks to the Chandler Museum for putting that together. I knew it was coming up. I just kind of haven't really been following up with the Chandler Museum about this. So thanks to Wayne, who I did meet at the last screening there, for giving me a reminder. So yeah, to quote his email, "Yeah, Derek, are you attending the World's August 14th showing at Chandler Museum? Sounds like a podcast opportunity. I'm going to bring my recorder. I don't know if I'll get anything there or not, but I'm going to go enjoy the film." Have you seen The War of the Worlds yet? Man, it's so good. I'll make sure there's a link to this in the show notes over at monsterkidradio.net, which is where you're going to want to go to find everything you need to know about the podcast, everything that we've talked about, links to what Robert's up to. You're going to find our Amazon affiliate link where you can purchase things through Amazon as normal, but you help us out a little bit. I mentioned putting Robert's book there. Make sure you check that out. Also going to have links to our TeePublic store. We've got a line of kaiju t-shirts, our Death Designs, which are our Hawaiian-style shirts. Got a number of things going on over there on our website, including our contact information, monsterkidradio@gmail.com, and our voicemail line, 360-524-2484. I'd love to know what you thought of Kaiju plus 1 week this year, and, well, just about anything that you have to say about the show. I'd love to include it in an upcoming episode. Like I keep saying, Beth and I are going to be doing a feedback-specific episode in the near future, and I cannot wait to hear what you have to say. So if you want to be part of that episode, drop me a line, give me a call, send me an audio file, send me a smoke signal, tune up the Telerocitor, or however it is you communicate with your favorite Monster Kid podcasters. You're also going to find links to all of our social media outlets over here. Facebook, X, Blue Sky. We're on Reddit. We don't do a lot on Reddit, but we do have a subreddit. Would love to do more on Reddit. If you're a Reddit user, would love to see you get involved in our Monster Kid Radio subreddit. That would be awesome. We're also on Patreon, patreon.com/monsterkidradio, where you can help support the show by becoming a patron or just following along for free. And I would love for you to do that because I want you to know what's coming up on future episodes of the podcast. Later on this week, I'm going to go on my social media blast where I go out and remind people that, hey, we've got the podcast out. This is what we did. Here are the show notes. Check it out. On Patreon, this is the only place I talk about what the next episode is going to be. And hey, check this out. I already know this time, so I can go ahead and get that ready to go out probably on Wednesday. So you have until Wednesday to become a free follower over on Patreon. Or if you want to throw a few bucks our way, that helps us out too. Later this week, we're also going to be re-releasing an older episode of Monster Kid Radio. I'm really excited about this because I'm going to go through, and I found episodes 27 and 28 of the podcast. Years ago, over 10 years ago, Chris McMillan and I sat down and talked about Godzilla. Godzilla was talked about in the very early days of the podcast because, of course, Godzilla was. So I'm going to take those recordings, I'm going to remaster them, give them a little bit of a tweak here and there, and make them sound really, really good because technology's gotten better, and I'd like to think my editing skills have gotten a little bit better. We're going to put those episodes together as like one classic Monster Kid Radio episode. Throwback? I'm not sure what we're calling it. I can't remember what I put in there, but if you follow us on Patreon, if you become a paying patron, you're going to get access to this special souped up version of Chris McMillan and I talking about Godzilla. Bride of Monster Kid Radio is a Team Death production. All original content of Bride of Monster Kid Radio is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 Unported license. You can learn more about Team Death, our other projects like Death Designs, Mail Order Zombie, the Team Death YouTube channel, and more at www.teamdeath.com. Remember, death is spelled DETH. All previous episodes of this podcast, as well as the original Monster Kid Radio podcast, are available at www.monsterkidradio.net. Please rate and review Bride of Monster Kid Radio wherever you download your favorite podcasts. Doble Calambre is copyright 2026. The band is Los Esquizofrenicos. You can find them on Bandcamp. Go to losesquizofrenicos.bandcamp.com or just follow the link in the show notes and you'll be able to go check them out. Let them know that you heard about them here on Bride of Monster Kid Radio. My name is Derek M. Cook. I'll talk to everybody next week. Ciao.